The moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerf Herder Chandler and Jim Kaiju Baker. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
So did you guys see Jon Favreau's announcement for Mando Season 2?
Well,
Yes.
I know for a fact that I have an article from the
Hold on, wait. Let's actually start. Let's bring
Okay,
all this
sorry.
up. while we record.
See, we don't. This is so unstructured, folks. We just go for it.
Yeah, so
It's
welcome.
like we just drop a mic into the room and.
Yeah, we're rolling. So welcome back, and everybody listening. Christina is with us again. So
Yes,
if you were
yes,
afraid that
awesome.
she was going to be absent for the final Mando episode that we're going to record, no way. She's
No
here.
way.
I'm
She's
She's
definitely here.
entrenched.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, we need your expertise on this one.
And this week we are doing a classic feature that is near and dear to Christina's heart. So Hidden Fortress. So hang in there for that, because we haven't paired Mando up with anything so far.
No, but this is a fair pairing. I think.
It needs to be. I think we needed to do this with some kind of a Star Wars themed episode.
Oh yeah. I mean,
So-
if you knew anything about your Star Wars lore, that this movie looms large in Lucas's influences.
If you listened into our conversation at the very top of the show, we were talking about the announcement for season 2 of Mandalorian. So I cut off Christina, so I'm sorry. So please continue.
Please continue.
Totally fine. So Jon Favreau announced basically the same day as the last episode came out, season 2 coming fall 2020, and it was a tweet, and in the tweet there's a picture of a Gamorrean guard.
What?
A model of a Gamorrean
Shirtless,
guard.
right?
Shirtless. He looked like he'd been working out.
So I think it's probably going to cause a lot of speculation about how this Gamorrean guard is going to work into.
Yeah. Well, no, I think
season.
that he and Kylo are going to have a schwitz together and sweat it out.
They're going to be in the Jedi Greek bathhouse there.
Yes, they will. That's
Nice.
how you got to relax in the galaxy far away.
Well, Favreau already, because at the end of this episode, I'm going to talk about this article I have on the Hollywood Reporter, and Favreau's already confirmed that he has directed one episode.
Yeah.
Because he was unable to do so. He was so tied up with The Lion King last year when this thing was in motion that he really only, was there in writing and producing capacity.
Oh, he directed The Lion King? I was not aware of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew he did. I knew he did Jungle Book, but not that didn't.
Yeah. And we'll talk about this studio and what they're doing with this stuff, because it was very eye-opening and it blew me away. What we're seeing is not really what we're seeing on the show, but let's get into the episode itself, because it was awesome.
Wait, before we do that, I do have another bit of news about.
You have news? We don't even talk news anymore.
How the Rise of Skywalker has just been getting bad mouth over and over in articles I've been seeing online and headlines. And the latest was yesterday. Somebody took pains to mention that this past weekend, and it's not even over yet as we record this, but on Friday, I guess, it dropped 70 some odd % box office wise. And it pulled in 27 million, I think was. So that was the big headline, Skywalker drops 70%. Just takes in 27 million, and then when you read the article, it says, well, yeah, that's kind of what all the other Star Wars movies did as well in their second weekend.
Man.
So it made it seem like it was this terrible, terrible thing, and the consequences of this terrible movie are being shown in the box office results. That's not the case at all.
That's not the case.
But again, it's just this mindset out there that people are trying to prove us wrong. Not us personally.
Right.
No, sometimes I do
it.
take it personal. I do take it personal that I have to feel that I have to defend the fact. Listen, I'm not an expert in film, but I know what I like.
Right.
I like that. I love that movie. And you can't convince me that it was a bad movie. I'm sorry that you don't like it.
Yeah.
But don't bring me into your quagmire.
Also, I think it's crazy to say that the film is a flop. I mean, the last I checked, it made $500 million worldwide. I
Yeah.
think any studio would be pleased with those kinds of figures.
Oh yeah,
So,
they're actually they're already sweating because they don't really nobody really has another tentpole movie like that coming out next year. So now all of a sudden, box office is going to be in decline.
and
Yeah,
I mean, I
and
don't think Disney's sweating it either because
No,
I read that they had 80% of the box office take this year with all of their assorted releases. All the Marvel movies, the the actual Disney movies, the Star Wars films. I mean, Frozen's already made $1 billion.
oh yeah, Disney's not
So
hurting. They're
I,
a mass
yeah,
conglomerate.
and is
at
that
this
even
point.
counting what they're pulling from their 20th Century Fox properties? Eventually, they're
Well,
just
they
going to
haven't
be a
even tapped
monopoly,
into.
right?
They haven't. That is a
Right.
monopoly. Pretty soon, Disney's going to own this show. We're going to have to wear Mickey ears.
We'll get our checks. As long as we get checks, signed by
Really?
Bob Iger, I'll be happy. Yeah.
More than likely, we'll just
Right.
get cease and desist. Yeah.
And another bit of news. Speaking of Bob Iger, I read something just this morning that he was chastised by Jon Favreau for calling the child Baby Yoda.
How can you
Oh,
not at
what?
this point? Yeah, I did read that. Yes, in this article, they refer to the original trilogy Yoda as Yoda proper. But yeah, this is the child, the foundling, whatever you want to call it. But we'll get into it because at some point he has to give this thing a name.
Yeah, let me just say that nobody out there that uses the term Baby Yoda thinks that this is Yoda.
I'm sure there's somebody
No.
out there. I'm sure that there's somebody out there who's like, "What do you mean this is not Baby Yoda? What are you talking about?
What you talking about, Favreau?"
There you go. Imagine that, chastising your boss. Yeah, that's not his name.
I'm sure Mr. Iger probably did exaggerate. I'm sure it was not a chastising.
Did he do the finger?
Perhaps he.
Yeah, but I had read that Dave Filoni said it was okay to call it Baby Yoda.
I think these two need to work it out.
It is okay.
Mm.
Maybe
Right?
that
At
was
this
just
point,
a
it is.
personal
It's in
feeling on his.
It's the zeitgeist. It's out there. You can't put it back. You can't put Baby Yoda back in the crib at this point.
Right. Baby Groot sets the precedent for this.
I am Groot.
Because Baby Groot is Groot, but Baby Yoda is not specific.
Correct.
Right.
Yoda. Yeah.
But what if we found out that Yoda is the species?
That seems weird.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's sort of like Smurf, right?
Yeah, there you
to be
go.
like-
An adjective at this point.
Mhm.
I feel Smurfy.
Mando Chapter 8. And this is unfortunately the last Mando chapter we'll be covering for quite some time.
I will
Yeah.
tell you what, though, this is a hell of an episode to go out on.
Yeah, there's a lot of information that they delivered in
There's
this
a lot of
episode.
exposition being thrown at you. But there's a lot of action, too. This was everything I wanted to see in the show. They've been culminating. It was good. It was cool.
Yes, I agree that this was a great episode. And I just almost shouted in surprise at the end when I saw who it was directed by, expecting it to be Favreau, as
No, he wrote it, though.
runner.
I knew it before the episode aired that Taika was going to direct the last episode. I don't know where I read that. And the opening scene of the two scout troopers is such a Taika Waititi scene. It's so much his humor. If you've
It's
seen,
genius.
It is,
Because
it
you
is,
really
but- But like your feelings of hatred and mirth are just so intertwined in this because, excuse the pun, but to punch up the scene, they actually strike Baby Yoda numerous times in between these
they
jokes.
beat him.
So,
Right, because this takes place right after the last chapter where they capture Baby Yoda. Quell is dead, and these two biker scouts now have Baby Yoda in a bag.
right, and the one scout trooper keeps punching the bag.
him because Yoda's making noise.
he's making
moving
noise.
around.
Yeah. It should be mentioned that the voices of these two stormtroopers are played by Jason Sudeikis,
Yep.
who's ex-Saturday Night Live, and he's in a number of his own movies, and Adam Pawley, who is, if you've ever seen Modern Family, he's one of the minor characters, and he's done a bunch of television. So they're both well-known comedians. Their dialogue is very funny, especially when they get to target practice.
Oh, that was genius.
Oh,
Because they just can't hit the broadside of a barn, which is the running joke of stormtroopers from day one.
And they're 10 feet away from this
right,
thing,
correct.
too.
Yeah. But you know what reminded me of this little scene? Do you remember, like in the 90s, the TV show Cops, and somebody had done a Star Wars spoof called, I think it was either Troops or Troopers. Stormtroopers on the ground going door to door, whatever, arresting people. I kind of got a little bit of a flavor of that, but it was pretty funny. It was really kind of out of left field, and chuckled.
Although at one point, I actually yelled at the TV. I was like, "Stop hitting the baby!
Yeah.
Nobody
What's
has
the matter
respect.
with you?"
Nobody
you're
has
just like,
respect
oh,
for
these
this child.
guys, you
Well, they
know.
don't know what it is, right? Everyone is like, what is it? You know, like, what is
Mhm.
this thing?
Yeah.
Shouldn't you be feeding this thing? And then it bites
It's
him.
Yeah, that's great when he bites him. Like, good
Yeah.
for you, kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then who comes to save him?
IG-11.
I know. Now, how did he get so far off ship? He was on the ship, right? He was on the ship, and all of a
yeah.
sudden he's halfway across the desert standing in front of these guys. But
Yeah, you know that these guys are not long. That
no,
they're
they deserve. You know that they deserve. They beat the Baby Yoda. They must die.
Mhm. But I did like in last episode, I was really concerned about IG-11. I was like, is Quell's programming going to hold? Like, is he really going to be, you know, a nurse for the child? And
Right. Or
I
something's
was
going to kick in. Yeah.
yeah, and I was really happy to see him become this super heroic nanny.
Yeah. No,
nanny
it was
character.
great. It was awesome. It was, and for him, when he comes swooping back into town, he's on the speeder bike with Baby Yoda in the backpack. And he's
Mhm.
just blasting troopers left and right as he zooms into town. That to me was like my favorite scene in this entire
Yeah.
show. It was just balls to the wall. Like this is, and Baby Yoda is like hanging on like a dog out the window, like.
I love when his ears blow in the wind.
Yes.
Yeah.
And everyone seems to like rub his ears. Like if you,
Mhm.
Oh,
if you
I
met
would
this
too.
thing- if
I
you
would
met this thing
too.
in person, that's exactly what you'd want to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? A little scratch behind the ear.
Moff Gideon has our heroes really pinned down. They're pulling out this super weapon called the eBay, the E-Web, whatever this
E-Web.
thing
You
means.
You saw them employ that on Hoth during Empire Strikes Back as well.
Is that what it
tri-foot
is?
cannon? Yeah, it's
Okay.
basically this. It seems that these guys took a lot longer to set it up than the Hoth troopers did, but
Yeah.
it was just long enough for Gideon to.
But Gideon's really only
expound.
using this as a threat because
No, but he's
trying
monologuing.
to get there.
He's
Yeah.
full on syndrome there. He's monologuing, giving them just enough time to figure out how to get out of there.
And he knows all of their identities. This was actually really interesting to me.
That was very interesting because so we find out that Cara Dune is from Alderaan.
I
so
know.
you're like, what?
And
Like, that
so
was-
she
that
has
was good.
personal reasons to hate the Empire. So
And
you
why
get
she-
kind of where she's coming from now.
Right.
And
now,
he knew Mando's name.
Yeah. Din Djarin is his name. And now it was kind of explained by Mando. Gideon turns out to be behind this purge that we keep hearing about over the course of the show.
Yeah.
And the purge isn't the purge of the Empire, but it's the purge of Mandalore. So apparently Gideon was key in destroying the race of Mandalorians. They're on the run now, and that's the reason they're all underground.
Right.
It wasn't really said whether Gideon knows him personally or, you know, he couldn't know the names of every Mandalorian as that were part of the purge.
No, right.
There's got to be some connection. But he's done his homework. As you said, he knows who Cara is.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, Grief, who's in there as well.
Yeah. And I liked him better in this episode than I have in some of the past. His acting was not quite so hammy.
He still gets some goofy lines in this episode.
But at least he was a productive member of the group. I love the four of these guys together.
Yeah.
Mhm.
This team.
Although, did you notice it appeared Grief Carter was taking shots during the scene when they're pinned down.
He was, because they were like hooked, they were like boarded up in the
Because there's a bar, right? There's a
Right.
bar there.
Yeah, listen, if I'm going out, I'm fucking drinking.
IG-11 comes swarming through with a speeder bike with the baby in tow. There's a bit of a firefight outside of the building before they retreat back in.
That's like right back where they started from.
Yeah, but
they
at
tried
one
to make
point,
their way out, but,
Mando has this E-Web, like, you know, he takes it off of its pedestal
and just
using it like Jesse the Body
Yeah,
in
that's
Predator
correct, right,
with
yeah.
Old Painless, right?
painless, which we saw him do in the previous episode though as well.
With
No, I don't think
IG-11.
Yeah.
When he's with IG-11 and they're breaking into the compound in the first episode.
Now,
Right.
apparently, any stormtrooper that we've ever seen, I think their armor is just besides the fact because anything can penetrate.
Could
A
go right
rock
through
can
it.
penetrate
Right.
this armor.
Right.
Ewoks were.
No, I was gonna
were
say
knocking
Ewoks
them
beat
out.
the crap out of them. So yeah.
They're certainly not made of Beskar. So anything you hit a
No.
stormtrooper with will bring them down.
I think it's called
easily.
Plascar. Yeah, they bought him off the rack.
So their plan, when they're holed up in this bar, remains the same once IG-88 comes in. They're trying to cut through one of the sewer grates to jump down into the sewers to hopefully hook up with the Mandalorians that are underground on Navarro. So that's the plan. But Mando takes some heavy hits during this sequence.
Yeah,
So much so that he can't join them, that he's too wounded and he wants to fall back so to allow them time to escape. IG-11, being the nurse droid that he is, realizes that it's key to the child's survival to bring Mando along. We said earlier that Boston exists in the Star Wars universe. Bactine exists as well.
That's right, yeah. That's exactly what it was.
They even call it Bacta, and it's a spray.
Don't forget that Luke was in a Bacta tank after the attack on a Wampa, so that did have a precedent. Yeah, that was a cute little thing where he's like, it's gonna heal your central processing unit, and he goes, my brain, and he goes, that was a joke.
Yeah, but no. This is a big moment. This is a huge.
It was a big moment, and we said it was going to be anticlimactic.
Yeah, we see the big reveal.
Right, because he says, because Kara tries to take his helmet off first.
Right.
And he stops her and says, you have to leave me here. I'm dying.
Yeah.
He's apparently been shot in the head. And when everyone else is left, the IG unit tries to do the same thing. And he says, I can't take my helmet off in front of a living being. And the IG unit's like, well, I'm not a living being.
Yeah, which was
great.
Loophole.
But before that happened, it was so bizarre because supposedly Moff Gideon wants the child, right? This is what he's out here for. And he sends in a stormtrooper with a flamethrower.
Right. Somehow he thinks the baby's not going to be burnt to a crisp.
To burn them out. He says, go burn them out. And I'm thinking to myself, does he care at all about?
I don't think he does, because go back to the original, the original mission, which was bring it in cold, bring it in warm. It doesn't matter.
I know, but if it's burned,
I don't know.
How they can use it? Yes.
Maybe he likes his Yodas extra crispy.
But
maybe they're actually tastier that way. KFC.
But then Baby Yoda uses his little force power. It's quite cute because it's the first time you see him use two hands.
Yeah.
And he, deflects the fireball back because Mando's in danger. He looks at Mando. He's in danger, and he walks forward and he deflects the fireball. And then Kara and Greef take the child into the sewers, and then the IG unit stays to heal Mando. It's sort of weird though. It's like he's staggering along, and then suddenly like the Bacta kicks in or something, and then he feels fine.
There's a point where he's like, dude, I'm good. Yeah, he needs help for about a minute.
Yeah, and I'm just glad that when they took the helmet off, it wasn't like Barbara Streisand soft focus with beautiful hair and everything else.
It would have been great if it was a stunt double.
That it did look like somebody that hasn't taken this helmet off.
Yeah, but he must, because he has a shave, right?
Well, he does. He takes it off when there's nobody around, so he can do his bathroom stuff and he can shower. And I guess he can. Stuff,
but why even bother? Why have any grooming habits at all? He Mando-scapes. But the whole Mandalorian backstory, there's a lot of stuff that's tying into what was established in the Clone Wars cartoon, especially at the very end.
Yes.
So, but
my son went completely berserk at the end of this episode.
Yeah. But so it leaves a lot of questions open. But you refer to the Purge, and I think there's an episode in the Clone Wars called "Night of a Thousand Tears" that touches on this. The Jedi coming down and basically trying to eradicate the Mandalorians. But
right. So when they go into the tunnels and they finally reach with the blacksmith lady,
who is badass. She is. She's much more Viking to me. She's like straight up more Viking lore than samurai or anything. She's got the fur collar. She's got the helmet with the slight little horns on it, and she knows how to wield a hammer. That's for sure.
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed that scene where she was kneeling down, waiting for the stormtroopers to come. Yeah. And they surround her with their weapons, like they think they're going to do something to her.
Yeah. But
this also reveals another plot hole as to how these inept stormtroopers are able to defeat the Mandalorians that they do. It does.
Yeah. There's got to be a couple good shots. I don't know.
Right. Maybe the black stormtroopers came down. Maybe it was a whole cadre of them. Who knows?
It could be. But that was a cool scene. And did she explain something? Like somehow they've never heard of Jedi.
Yeah, that was weird as well. Like they're magicians.
I once knew like a race of sorcerers.
But the Jedi used to run the Republic.
Right. Correct. Right. Yeah. Like that. They were in like the thousands. They were like their own religion.
More importantly, the Jedi and the Mandalorians had like an ongoing conflict for a really long time. And there's a character in Clone Wars who becomes a Jedi, and
Right.
he's the one, you know about this, Jen,
Yes,
right?
correct.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And he's the one who first creates the thing that we're not going to talk about yet because it's at the end of the episode.
The thing we're not going to talk about. Great. Stay tuned. If you're listening to this episode and have not seen it, perhaps you should watch the
But
show
yeah,
first.
we do like to go in chronological order, and
Correct.
So it is a little weird where she's like, I have heard of these people, the Jedi. Like, the Jedi are actually really strongly intertwined with the Mandalorian's history.
Yeah, if you're going down the road of what was established in the Clone Wars, which is canon.
Yeah,
I mean, Dave Filoni is right there next to.
And it does seem odd that since they're bringing all this stuff in from other shows and other movies that they would drop that.
But again, it's like I think there's like a 1,000-year gap. Well, no, that's not even true because I mean the
prequels only took place 20, 30 years. Yeah,
right. Yeah. And Order 66 plays into that episode.
That's like us saying we don't know what Vietnam is or what's
correct,
Vietnam.
Right? Yeah.
Right.
Well, certain textbooks, unless when they went underground, they just they stopped talking about this crap.
But yeah, our heroes they go down into the sewer vents. Mando gets his backpack. Now it seems like it's a greatest American hero type of thing where you have to really train how to use this. I don't think it comes with an instruction manual. But he's got to feel it out over time. Yeah,
and she says, until you heal, it will not obey your commands. And she refers to it as the Rising Phoenix. And I'm just like that to me is a huge geek moment. I'm like, Rising Phoenix, that's awesome.
It's got to play in somehow to the end of this episode. So that's telegraphed. And then after we have the battle with the Forger, Mandalorian.
Yeah, but she gives him his new mission.
To protect the child.
She gives him the signet.
That's a signet.
They are now a clan of 2. And she says, here's your mission, which is you need to reunite this family with its race and train it.
Now, does this make Baby Yoda a Mandalorian?
Oh, little Mandalorian armor? Oh,
yeah.
There's plenty of armor to melt down now.
There is.
Make him a new suit.
Oh, a tiny little Beskar suit.
I guess put his ears under the helmet. That's the question.
I wonder if they've got little Baby Gap type shops in this galaxy far, far away that he can go and get him some new potato sacks to wear.
There you go.
I really want to see some stripes or some polka dots, some
little
variety.
Patterns,
dungarees, the cute little dungarees.
Spring collection going on. And at one point, IG-11 hands Cara the baby, and she's like, I don't do the baby thing. She's the only one who really is repulsed by this thing.
Yeah.
She's
doesn't want to touch it. Yeah.
Now, let's be reminded that IG-11 is voiced by Taika himself.
Yes.
Correct.
So, and he has the most dialogue that he ever has had in this show, in this episode.
Well, he's now a new droid.
Yeah, because he's now like the Mary Poppins to Baby Yoda.
I'm Mary Poppins, y'all.
And he's got to sacrifice himself at the end
to
save everybody. They're in the sewer, but they're on a lake or a canal of lava.
Had you ever seen that droid before?
No, nothing like that. We've never seen an R2 with like extendo legs and arms. It was a weird combo, but it was just kind of like he was like the little gondola in Venice. He's like, all right, I'll take you guys down the river.
I know, he started moving, and then these arms and legs came off this R2 unit, and I was like, "What?
It was kind of bizarre."
At least he didn't have his own little jetpack in this R2 unit.
That is true.
Yeah,
that was a one and done with R2. Yeah, extendo arm R2. That was pretty. Hasbro's working on that action figure as we speak.
Yeah. But here we go again. I think the threat of the stormtroopers is completely overestimated because Mando can see that this is a trap on the outside of this canal.
Right.
And there's probably 20 maybe?
Yeah, I was going to say
stormtroopers.
A little over a dozen, 2 dozen at the most.
Yeah. IG-11 should be able to take these guys out quite easily. I think.
We just saw him take out like an entire platoon there coming into town.
But for some reason, they are they're convinced that they're not going to make it through this trap of stormtroopers. Right. So they send out IG-11 first.
Well, I think he sends himself. They actually try to stop him.
They do try to stop him.
And they said, no. Your mission is to save this baby. And he goes, no, as long as the baby's with you, my mission's fulfilled. He goes out and he goes kaboom. Blows them all up.
But we're not out of the woods yet because a TIE fighter comes screaming
Did you
down.
feel like a tunnel of love vibe when they were coming out on the boat and out of the tunnel? It was like they were at the ride in Disneyland there.
But again, I thought it was bizarre. Moff Gideon comes flying over in the TIE fighter.
Just
He starts-
alone, all by himself, right?
Right. It just starts firing on the boat. I'm like, does he actually want this kid, or does he just want to blow something up? Because it's really not clear at this point. Because it was so important that he acquire the child that he actually killed supposedly his ally, right? Werner Herzog's character. Now he's just firing indiscriminately on the boat that the baby's in.
Yeah.
I don't really understand his motivations at this point.
Yeah, I think they went out the window. I think it's just like a personal vendetta at this point. But I love the fact that Grief is like, come on, kid, do your little hand thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And Yoda just kind of like looked up a little bit and he's like, yeah, I can't.
He waved back.
Right.
Yeah.
He waved at him.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, do the magic hand thing.
It's like jazz hands. Do the magic hands.
He was still exhausted from the last time he did it.
But Mando at this point uses his jetpack to have a mini dogfight with Moff Gideon,
which was awesome.
And
a
TIE
little
fighter.
grappling. He's got a little grappling hook going on, and
yep.
That was pretty well done.
So, and he manages to climb onto the back of the TIE fighter. After a failed attempt, he gets a detonation device on one of the wings and brings Moff Gideon down. And our heroes escape. It's assumed that the Empire is now purged from Navarro because Grief and Kara are going to stay. So,
an entire planet, like they just took out like 12 guys and they're like, we're free.
Yeah.
It's like, you go one town over. There's more. They're still hanging out. They haven't heard this story yet.
But here's the reveal. So I know less about this than you guys do. So please take it away.
As Mando makes his way out into space and he's off on his adventure, he's going to go with the Baby Yoda and I guess train him, do something with him, try and find his way. But you see a bunch of Jawas descending upon the wrecked TIE fighter, and they're going to just scavenge the crap out of it. And all of a sudden you get a lightsaber coming straight through the hull, and out pops Gideon, and he's got the most cartoon-looking lightsaber we have ever seen in a Star Wars movie TV show. And it is referred to as the Dark Saber. Mm-hmm. Which is an oxymoron because how can you have a black lightsaber?
Right. So the interesting thing about the dark saber is, if you know about its history,
I was gonna say you alluded to it a little bit before.
Yeah, is that it's won in battle basically, and Darth Maul actually carried it at one point.
Right.
And then if you watch the Star Wars Rebels show, there's a character named Sabine Wren who carries the dark saber on that show. So it's kind of, I think I read that because I was trying to figure out the time difference. I think I read that there's like 8 years between Rebels and the events of The Mandalorian. So it's like, well, what happened to Sabine Wren? You know, what happened to the Darksaber? And did Moff Gideon kill her?
It's like you were alluding to it before, which was there was a Mandalorian who actually was a Jedi by the name of Tara Vizsla. And it was like 1,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, and that was all set up and established in the Clone Wars. But yeah, you're right. There's you know how did this guy acquire this thing? So there's obviously more to the story, and it would be great to see some of these characters carry over in the real world from Rebels.
Does it mean that Moff Gideon is a Sith Lord?
You know, you could right now. You could, yeah. I mean, it's up for grabs. Who knows?
Or he could just be the dark side of somebody like Chirrut in Rogue One, where he's not a Jedi or a Sith Lord, but is a follower of the Force.
Yeah.
He's a follower of the dark side of the Force.
Yeah,
I think it definitely leaves a lot more open for speculation in terms of, you know, the mythology of the show. I was glad that they didn't kill him off because, you know, he seems like he'll be an interesting.
Yeah, no, he's a great character. I mean, you know, he's got a lot of charisma on screen. So, and I think that the stakes of who and what he is or could be connected to just stepped up a notch. So going into next season, you know.
But we still didn't find out. So we still don't know where the child comes from.
No. Apparently we may not know for a while. So,
and that seems like something they're going to explore in the next season because that's part of his mission, right? She says, you need to find out where he came from.
Yep.
And until then, you're his dad.
Yeah.
You know, you're his father. But the other thing too is, I did not get my Boba Fett reveal. I'm sorry, I'm still upset.
No. based
Yeah,
on
the
that.
more I think about it, I don't think it was Boba Fett. I think it was Moff Gideon. I think that those were his feet.
You think they would have at least had a little mention? Oh, I saw what you did on that planet with that chick. Just to kind of.
But there was
put
no
us-
mention either way, which
No,
was disappointing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Mm.
And I'm wondering if it's something they're saying. I mean, I watched all the way to the end of the credits. I was like, maybe there'll be, something
A little
there.
teaser.
Right.
Because there's just no resolution on that at all. Even if Fennec Shand is still dead, because like the way that the person, whoever it was, approaches the body, like maybe she's still alive. Maybe she's just wounded
maybe,
or whatever.
yeah.
So
Let me take her back and heal her.
I think my big frustration with this episode and the last one is that they crammed a lot into 2 episodes, or 2 chapters, sorry. They totally could have dumped this prisoner chapter and expanded this more.
Yeah,
and I think developed, the story and the tension a little more, to the point where you could have gotten more information maybe about Moff Gideon or
they're parsing it out. Yeah, with only 8 episodes, to have 3 be fillers is kind of silly, but hopefully they'll have tighter reins next year. Do we know it's just another 8 chapter season next year? They didn't reveal that, right?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, we don't know. So we don't know. And this was probably the longest episode, right? 45 minutes.
I think
it was
so.
one of them, if not the longest. Yeah.
Right. So
disappointments aside, and I think I can speak for all of us, this is a show that has really, and I said this before I saw Rise of Skywalker, but so that excluded from this statement, I think that this has really captured the attention and has endeared itself to Star Wars fans more so than anything really has in a very long time. A lot of people are now invested again, and I think that's great, and I think it's deserving of all the attention that it's getting, this show.
Yeah, until season 2 comes along and all of a sudden people are like poo-pooing it. I think by and far everything I'm seeing on the show is pretty positive. Most people.
It's interesting because I just saw somebody the other day, somebody tweeted, I don't know who it was, it was one of those things that gets retweeted, and someone said that, the Mandalorian has grown every week in their audience and in the in sort of in the cultural conversation, because Disney Plus chose to release the episodes week to week. The sort of pump and dump model for Netflix does not keep your product sort of in the
consciousness.
mind.
No, we were saying before when we first started talking about this, which is it's must-watch television again.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're right, because we're going to be talking Lost in Space, which season 2 just dropped on Netflix. Last week? I banged through all 10 episodes in the last 3 days. I have my notes, but I might have to go back and kind of look at it again before we even talk about it.
But then people don't talk about your show every week for 8 weeks or 10 weeks
correct.
or whatever.
Now all of a sudden it's like, all right, when's the next season coming?
Yeah, and then you start seeing Facebook posts or tweets. Did you see the latest episode?
I had somebody already ruin Lost in Space, the last episode, at work. Yeah.
Really?
And I'm just like, I'm like, I want to go. On Monday, I'm going to walk in there and just beat him. I'm just like, really? Come on. And then visually, it's pretty impressive. And I want to get into this. I was mentioning at the beginning of the show, this Hollywood Reporter interview with Jon Favreau in this this virtual reality studio that he's created. Do you realize that this entire show is all shot on a soundstage?
I had read, that all the backgrounds are digital.
No principal photography takes place in the environment.
Really?
Yeah.
It is a 360. Hold on, I'll read this.
Even at that in that rice paddy type world that they were on with.
So hold on, because I'm going to read this little block of text, which blows my mind. It's on a large soundstage with a full ceiling and a 360-degree view. We change the environment every day. Sometimes it's a spaceship, sometimes it's a desert, sometimes it's in ice or in mud. There's limited location work on the series, but it's all within the LA area. We also go all over the world, like Iceland and Chile, and we actually shoot assets that we put into the layers of the video wall. So there's real photography being incorporated, but the actors aren't brought on location. The location is brought to the actors, which is mind-boggling when you think about the texture and how much these environments play into the look and feel of this show. but without seeing like a physical picture of them filming on set, if this thing is all green screen, there has to be physical objects that you're employing around you, whether they're hiding behind a wall or rock or any of that stuff. That, to me, that has to exist. You know, it's going back to Sky Captain: The World of Tomorrow, where Kevin Conrad was creating everything in green screen. You know, if he had a phone in his hand or he had a gun in his hand, that was it. Everything else was CG, but it looked CG. This is just I would have lost money if I laid money down to say that, you know, that they're out there in the desert shooting.
Yeah, in the forest and whatever. Yeah,
right. You know, so that blew my mind. So I think Favreau is really at the cutting. I mean, he's right up there with Cameron. He's right up there with Lucas as far as taking this technology and really kind of doing something new with it. And apparently Marvel's all over this technology now, and they're willing to share. You know, it's like he's like, I don't own this. You know, we've only taken the next step, but let's get it out to the world and let everybody kind of make their own thing. They're partnering up with ILM and all these other virtual reality houses to take this technology even farther.
I think that explains where a lot of the production budget is going, because even with the $12.5 million per chapter figure that I had read, that's still relatively cheap if you think that they're going out on location,
right?
You know, every episode, but they're not.
And they're probably still tweaking this technology as they go. So, you know, next season they might have this stuff. That's why James Cameron is making 12 Avatar movies, because he spent so much money developing and building this world. He now has it all. It's all on the computer. Why am I going to just put this on the shelf and waste it? So you know, next season, who knows what they're going to be doing? But I was blown away when I read that. I thought that was pretty cool.
So now, unfortunately, we have to leave The Mandalorian.
We are. That's it.
Yeah,
bye, Mando.
that's it.
Bye, Baby Yoda. We're not going to have Baby Yoda meme for another year. What is it, 2020?
Yeah.
One more thing, Jim, before we walk away, because I thought this was interesting, which is Jon Favreau's also working with it's a stop motion Netflix special called Alien Christmas, and he's doing it with the Chiodo brothers
from Killer Clowns,
the directors from Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Oh, just when you thought you've heard the last of them.
Yeah, what crate did he open to get those two guys?
I don't know. They refer to them as the 3 sibling stop motion specialists.
Wow.
So, yeah.
All right, that should be interesting.
Yeah,
so I assume that'll be ready for next Christmas.
Somewhere. It just says on its way, so who knows?
In honor of our Mando Chapter 8, I dredged up a Bactine commercial. So
you were too much.
And once we go to the snack bar after that commercial, we're going to come back for Hidden Fortress. So stay tuned.
What happened?
Just fell off the swing.
He did? Well, let's see. Oh, a little Bactine will fix that right up.
That good stuff?
Oh, it's real good.
Bactine is unsurpassed in killing germs among the leading antiseptics.
Uh-oh, looks like you need some, too. Is that better?
Better.
Oh, you got it.
Bactine helps the hurt stop hurting.
We are about to witness the takeoff of the first manned rocket to outer space. We pick up the count. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
We're off to visit the planets. There are treats galore in the stars. Venus is loaded with candy, and ice cream is found upon Mars. The soda pump's fizzing on Saturn. When you're thirsty, it sure is the spot. And Jupiter's really jumping. The popcorn is buttered and hot. But the best of them all is the planet, where all of these treats are at hand. And that is the spot we now head for, our theater refreshment stop.
Okay, we're back, and
that actually comes in handy. That comes in handy because I tripped and fell going to the concession stand at the drive-in.
All right,
and now I need Bactine on my knee.
You don't need me to spray in your face and on your head like IG-11 did to Mando? Okay. Our classic feature today is Hidden Fortress.
This is a classic. 1958.
1958, Akira Kurosawa. And now, Christina, is this his first Toho scope feature? Did I read that correctly?
Yes, it is his first widescreen feature, which seems astonishing, but the technology just hadn't been adopted by Japanese cinemas Even if the studios had wanted to do it, a lot of theaters didn't have the capacity to show widescreen films. So 1958, that was his first opportunity, and you'd never know that he hadn't made a widescreen feature before.
Yeah,
No.
He used the screen. Although it's pretty funny to see the Toho logo come up and not expect Godzilla to show up.
Right. He is taking full advantage of the widescreen format here, and every shot is just beautifully structured and balanced, proportionate, and it's wonderful to watch. You could watch it with the sound down and not even care about the story. A cinematographer could just sit there and take notes on this thing and just look at frame by frame by frame how nicely it all fits. I loved it. I loved watching this.
My Criterion Collection version, the print was pristine. I mean, it was very impressive for 1958. But my disc also had a little interview with Lucas because we had talked about the fact that this was a huge influence. And he says the exact same thing as you do, Jim, which is that Kurosawa knows how to play a scene out, unique and innovative camera movements. I mean, for somebody who, this is his first rodeo with a new toy, and he went right to town with it.
Yeah, because that first opening scene where you see Tae and Masashi, walking away and their backs are to the camera, and then, they hear something, so they turn, but the film viewer doesn't see it yet.
No. Yeah.
And then this samurai stumbles out of the corner, and you could freeze the movie right there. Like, that's a perfect shot.
Yeah, because he's staggering back and he's kind of looking up like what is this? What is chasing this guy? You really don't know.
But before we get into the story, I just wanted to tie in Hidden Fortress, because again, we did mention George Lucas notes this on the DVD that this was a major influence for him. Maybe not so directly story-wise. Which is,
it's weird because, if you're entrenched at all in the history of Star Wars and the lore, this looms large. Lucas has gone on record. You read it all the time. This is a huge, and then you watch it, and this is the first time I've ever seen this, and it is not what I expected at all. This is when you hear the title Hidden Fortress and it somehow influenced Star Wars, you're thinking we're going to get this Death Star level stakes of escape and survival, and it's not that at all.
Now, I want to hear from Christina, because you are really steeped in Japanese film, and I know you have a love of Kurosawa, especially, and his movies like Yojimbo and, of course, Seven Samurai. Now, what is your relationship specifically to this movie, and when was the first time you saw it, and so forth?
Gosh, I don't know when the first time was that I saw it. I really don't. Sometime 20 years ago, maybe, or more. There's certain things that I really love about this film. It's really unique, even among Kurosawa's films, obviously, because the point of view of the story is primarily from the peasants. In a normal jidaigeki, which is the period film, the term for period film in Japanese film. In a normal jidaigeki, you would have the point of view would be from the royalty, right? From the princess, the general. Like, these are large events that are going on here, and you wouldn't choose the point of view of, two minor players. But that's what really makes the film unique. And I'm such a huge fan of Toshiro Mifune, and this is, for me, one of his most interesting performances because he's very restrained in this part. He doesn't have a chance to sort of use his kind of essential Mifune-ness that you see in other films. He's normally a very expressive actor, and he's very physical. There's a few scenes in here where you really get to see that. But you don't get to see it as much as other films because Kurosawa purposely contrasts the sort of extreme clownishness of the two peasant characters with the general and the princess. They're actually made up, their faces look like no masks, and they behave in a very sort of no theater manner very often throughout the film. And this is actually emphasized because, like, Princess Yuki's music is also no music. It's like you hear the no flute and the drums when she's on screen. So there's a lot of there's so many things about this. I mean, there's so many things about this film, but
I
the
love the
interesting
music.
thing, the
I thought it was
interesting
very
thing,
whimsical.
right? And it is definitely when Tahe and Madasichi are on screen, it's a different kind of music that the composer uses. Masaru
Right.
Sato was like Kurosawa's composer. Basically, he worked with him for I think 10 years or more, and he composed a lot of his most popular scores. Actually, he has an amazing score for Yojimbo. But the interesting thing was that Kurosawa had come off making like 3 very serious movies. He had made Seven Samurai, that was super popular, and then he made Record of a Living Being, which was not popular. It was a film about a person who was so terrified of nuclear war that he wanted to basically pack up his whole family and move them away, and it was sort of a psychological exploration of this character. And then he made Throne of Blood, which is Macbeth, and it's Japanese Macbeth. And then he made The Lower Depths, which is actually a Gorky play, which is about a bunch of cast-offs in the Edo period in Japan. So there were all these very serious movies, and Kurosawa said he wanted to make a film that was 100% entertainment, and that was his goal for Hidden Fortress. And he had a completely bizarre writing process on this film, where he always worked with other screenwriters. He never wrote a screenplay by himself. And he had 3 other screenwriters, and he said every morning he would think of a situation for Princess Yuki and the general to get into that they couldn't get out of, and the other 3 screenwriters would try to figure out how to get them out of this conundrum. That was how they constructed.
That's like a little writing exercise 101 there, huh?
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty funny.
Maybe they should start writing for The Walking Dead. I think.
Yeah. Too late. There's no getting out of that.
No.
I was surprised at how much cursing there is in this movie for a 50s movie. I mean, right off the bat, they're calling each other terms and yeah. And you see the relationship between these 2 characters, and immediately you're like, oh, that's R2 and 3PO. That's exactly where, I mean, we're just replacing with overweight Galapagos.
Yeah. So now to set the scene here, as we mentioned before, these 2 characters, Tahe and
Madashichi. Although often you hear Tahe sort of shorten his name, he just says Madashi, or he sort of Madashichi sort of drops the last syllable.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So they are they've escaped from they're in the middle of a battle between 2 clans, the Yamana clan and the Akazuki clan, and they meant to fight for the winning side, which was the Yamana clan, but they were mistaken, and they got there late to the war. And they were mistaken for the Akazuki clan. So then the Yamanas took them prisoner, and they were forced into manual labor of burying bodies. And so they've escaped, and they're trying to get back home. So right from the opening scene, you're with these 2 characters, and maybe that's why Mifune is so downplayed in this.
Yeah.
Because not only is he really serving the princess, and he's like in a subservient role to her, but it's from their point of view. It's not from his point of view. So the story isn't following him. As Lucas does reveal a little bit later that was his big takeaway for Star Wars, is to have the story told from 2 minor characters. And so it's just like in this, Star Wars picks up with C-3PO and R2's point of view. Although, to be fair, they never attempt to rape Princess Leia. So
no, draw straws to see who's gonna go first. Who's gonna go for a walk while I take my time with her? Pretty simple-minded in the sense that once they discover the gold, that's their main. They just wanted to get that gold and run away at any opportunity.
They're such clowns. They're almost like Dickensian characters. They're like from a Charles Dickens novel, where they're so sort of extreme. Their expressions and their physicality, the way that, especially Minoru Chiaki plays Tahe. I don't know if you guys have seen other Kurosawa films, but he's sort of a Kurosawa stock player, and so is Kamatari Fujiwara, who plays Marusichi. And they famously, they're both in Seven Samurai. Minoru Chiaki is Heihachi, the woodchop samurai, and Fujiwara is Manzo, the farmer who's trying to hide his daughter from the samurai in Seven Samurai. And the two of them are so perfect together, because like Chiaki especially has almost like rubber features, and he has these very extreme physical reactions, to things that happen. He really responds sort of with his body.
Right. Yeah. A lot of physical. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so the two of them are like then argue after they see the samurai, right? Like, I don't want to be with you anymore, and they separate, just like R2D2 and
Yep. Exactly.
C3PO.
You go that way. I'm going this way.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And they're constantly bickering throughout this entire.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Until
which is endearing. I mean, like you said, they did try to bend a princess, but I mean, it is their story. I mean, the camera never really stops following them, unlike R2 and 3PO, which are just the through line.
Yeah. So they separate, and then there's they both end up being captured again in different ways. But one of the things I think that's amazing about this film, Kurosawa was sort of legendary for like building elaborate set pieces that wouldn't necessarily get used that often.
Just yeah.
Yeah, so he made this really elaborate village scene when Marusichi gets caught again. He goes into a village, he sees the sign, saying that they're offering a reward for the princess of the Akazuki clan, and you see in the background there's like this huge set of like a burned castle.
Yeah, it was very impressive actually.
And
but that was the only time you saw it.
Yeah. And there's people walking behind, clearly refugees, people like collecting their last possessions and things like this. And it's this really elaborate sort of setup that he has for a scene that's less than a few minutes long.
Right.
Because then Marusichi ends up getting captured again and taken to a castle where they're supposed to dig for gold. The Yamana clan wants the Akazuki gold, which is supposedly hidden in the ruins of the castle. And while he's there, he runs into his old pal, Tai, and is exactly like the scene on the Jawa transport.
When they meet up
reunited,
again. And now another huge set piece, that the whole digging for gold scene, which is a huge pit that all these extras are in.
Yes.
Before they stage their coup, so which moves the story and the characters further along, because now they're escaped again. So now they're in the same situation that they were in right in the beginning, but somebody is following them this time.
This is such a great sequence. So they're they have lit a fire, and they're just sitting there lamenting their life.
Right. They stole some rice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at least eat some rice.
One of them throws a stick, and they hear a metallic sound, a clink, clink. And they're both like, what? And they run over, and they find the stick, and they find a stick of gold inside it. So now they're going crazy, searching all the sticks.
There's gold in them there twigs.
Right. So as they're searching through the sticks, they're like fighting over who's going to get what, how they're going to share this booty when they find it. And they're basically strangling each other. And again, this beautiful use of widescreen that Kurosawa does. The camera tips up just like a degree, and you see Toshiro Mifune standing with his arms crossed in the notch, like between two rocks. And they both immediately kind of stiffen up and like, and pretend they haven't seen him.
Right, correct. Just don't give my contact. Walk away.
And then they start walking, because now they're like, oh, we don't want that guy to know about the gold.
Meanwhile, they're screaming 2 seconds earlier. We found gold.
And then later, they like, we ditched him, right? He's not following us. They light a fire again later. They've walked away. They've gone some distance away. And they're like, we'll go back in the morning and, look for the gold.
Right.
And he just walks into their fire. Like
pops down and
like just sits down, and he's so physically intimidating that they immediately back away.
Anybody who can pull off those shorts, I would give him a wide berth as well. Those shorts had to be riding on you after
No,
a
and
while.
he wears a samurai beard probably better than anybody on this earth. He is the living personification of what you might think somebody like this would look like, would actually look like. So he sells it. He definitely does.
Yeah, he's a bit of a
And
bully to them.
Oh yeah, he loves torturing these two
he
guys.
tortures them. Yeah.
And Mifune was sort of legendary for like his physical preparation for the roles, and he did practice kendo. He practiced martial arts, and Kurosawa always like put him through the ringer training to get ready for these roles. So like when you see Mifune, the character on the back of a horse holding a sword, that is Mifune. That is not a stunt double.
Oh yeah.
You know.
And it takes a while before you kind of get him in action, but I mean, once he is in action, especially that the spear duel was pretty impressive.
Right.
But when you see him walk into the fire, you know, he's so. I think this is like the strongest he's been in any film, because like you can see the cords in his forearms, you know, and his, like, again, he's wearing the shorts. You could see like how muscular his thighs are. You can just sort of see his strength. You could see his physical strength.
Well, he holds. I'm gonna say just the way he holds himself, you know, is very intimidating. And because he's so quiet, he's so like he's a man of few words to begin with, and you're just like, all right, who is this dude?
And then he sort of forces them to. He just sort of forces them to go along with him.
Yeah.
It's like, you do this, you do that. This is how we're gonna handle this situation, and they're so rudderless that they just kind of let themselves be buffeted in his stream.
Yeah. So at this point, the moviegoer just thinks that he's a stranger that's in the same situation maybe that they are in.
Stranger danger.
But, you know, a little bit later on, it's revealed that he is actually a general, and he has been tasked to protect his princess, and they are part of the Akazuki clan, who has lost the war. Now, what I didn't really understand was, did he know that the gold was in those sticks beforehand, or was he discovering it along with them?
No, he knew, and he had hidden it.
Oh, he was the one that hid it. Okay.
Yeah, he knew where the gold was. He had hidden it in the stream, and obviously there's some, you know, he'd hidden it in the pond, and obviously some of the sticks had, you know, either been dropped or, you know, whatever along the way, which is how, you know, the two peasants find them. But yeah, he had that sort of stashed away. And actually the reveal when he introduces himself as, you know, Rokuruda Makabe is one of my favorite scenes, because they ask him his name and he says his name. And they're like, where have I heard that name before? And they're trying to like figure it out. And then they're like, he's a famous general. Like, you're not Makabe, you know, and then he starts laughing, and Toshiro Mifune has the best laugh of anybody in the world.
It's like hearty, like right from the gut.
Yeah. And it's so wonderful. And it's one of the few places where you actually see him smile in the film. And I think that that's one of those scenes where you really see his charisma, like why he was a megastar in Japan, you know, because he's just, you know, you can feel his star power, basically.
Yeah. And as Lucas alluded to in that interview, this in particular was a Western influenced film.
Yeah, he was very influenced by John Ford, which is weird because then you turn around and you get Magnificent Seven, which was a riff on this, you know, so it's like they're feeding off each other at a certain moment.
And in turn, I think Mifune is a very, you know, this may have been Kurosawa, it may have been Mifune himself, is also very, he appeals, you know, to the moviegoer, you know, me as an American moviegoer was found appealing. So I can see how he would be so charismatic to the Japanese moviegoer if they're not used to seeing that style of acting.
Yeah, he does have a very almost Western style of acting.
Yeah,
that was one of the things that Kurosawa, when he first saw him, was that he was captivated by him because he was so emotional. He said he was almost like a wild animal, you know, and that he had never seen a Japanese actor behave like that before. And he famously said that Mifune could do in 3 feet of film what it would take the average Japanese actor 10 feet of film to show. That he was just, and he was so willing to be unrestrained in his parts, which, you know, definitely made him different from a lot of the performers at the time.
So when they find the gold, Rokurudu, he it probably sees this then, since he knows it's there. He sees these two guys as an opportunity because he's hidden the gold in the wood. So now he has somebody that can move.
I was gonna say you can only carry so much.
And not only do they move it, he makes them move it up this impossible to climb rock slide of a hill.
Yeah.
And at the top of this hill, the reveal of the hidden fortress of the title is just about to be given. They get to this hidden fortress, and this is where we see there's a little band of people that are there that have the princess there. The teenage princess of the Akazuki clan is there, and that's what we find out. That's who this general is protecting.
Because they originally said something to him about the gold, and they're going to go and save the princess, and he's like, the princess has already returned her. Princesses. And then you find out, and then they're like, oh no, the princess is dead. They killed her. They beheaded her. And you find out that it was his sister who they sent as a decoy. And I was like, that's heartbreaking.
And we know that as a moviegoer, but the other characters do not. So they all think of this. They don't think of this girl as the princess. She's
just an obnoxious little... I don't even want to say it because you'll bleep me out anyways. But no, I mean, I guess maybe that's the way the princesses operated back then. But I don't know. I would have been hard pressed to actually help save her.
Yeah. Now, just like Rokurudu appears to our two main characters, so does she at one point, and they think that
on the crest of the hill.
Yeah, and they think because he says she's mine, and they're immediately like, oh, no time for love, Dr. Jones. We got work to do. Yeah, they don't know who she is, and then he tells her that in order to make this work, she has to pretend that she's mute, which is a great scene because they think that she can't talk, and there's a scene where he leaves the two of these idiots alone with her. And they're trying to escape. They now have the gold bundled up on the back of the horse, and they're like, "Let's tell her we're taking the horse to go drink."
Right, and they're miming like they pretend they have the horse ears.
Yeah, right. And she's just looking at him like, "You guys are the dumbest people." It's so funny. It is one of my favorite moments in this whole movie.
It's so great because basically every time Makabe's back is turned, the two of them are trying to make decisions by themselves. Every single decision they make is wrong.
Well, you realize why they're in the situation they're in because they have no clue that's probably why they latched onto him so early on. Because, like you said, they're rudderless. They don't know how to get out of each other's way, let alone survive. So yeah.
But yet they have this plan to circumvent one border to get home, to go through what they think is going to be a neutral border. Rokurudu, he laughs at their genius. He's like, they don't even know how
That was one of the other times
where
he laughs his ass off, and he's just like, these guys, say what you will about them, but it's a good plan.
Yeah.
That's exactly
they goofed their way into a good plan. But, the scene where they try to take the horses... And they think, oh, well, we'll just cross the border here at the river, right out here in the open.
Right.
And they're testing the thing. And then they start to get fired on by the samurai on the other side. And they just start running. And in the meantime, Yuki has gone back, taken the horses, and calmly walked back to the intersection where they had left Makabe, earlier. And then Makabe comes running back when he hears the gunfire. And he's like, where are they? And she's like, some allies you have here. They tried to take the gold.
They're looking for 3 men, 3 horses, and a woman, and they just walk right through town.
Yeah.
If you see anybody who looks like this, let us know.
But not before the princess decides to take a walk through town by herself. And she goes into, I assume, what is a brothel or like a
fun times at the old brothel there,
where there's a guy that's trying to sell a farmer's daughter that he's either kidnapped.
Yeah, and then they see her and they're like, "How much for her? Who owns her?"
Yeah,
I'll buy her right now.
That scene's actually, it's still really hard for me to watch because he grabs the girl's face, the one he's trying to sell, and he really manhandles her. She's wrenching her body around, she's trying to get away, and he's like, not just an average face, but she's got a really good body, and he talks about how she
hips.
Right, she cries all the time, oh, you cry all the time, you scare away the Johns, and then he really callously says, oh, well, war is good for business because you can just pick up women wherever.
Yeah, well,
I
hate to say it, that's what went on.
Yes,
I'm sure.
But it's one of these sort of almost odd notes of realism that Kurosawa inserts into this, comic film. And then Yuki is so distressed by her plight that she tells Makabe, you need to buy her. Like, we need to free her.
We need to
can't
take
leave her there.
or it's, and she ends up actually coming along with them.
And it's her princess.
Yeah.
She's a Akazuki clan member. So
Yeah.
they, that's why Yuki wants to save her specifically. She's like, she's my clan member. She's my responsibility.
Yeah.
And I can't leave her here.
They're all on the road. They just left the town. And these horsemen are coming after them. And what Jeff has said already, they're looking for 3 men and a woman. When they go
With
right
horses.
by them with
horses.
Oh, there's 3
so
men and 2 women here. So this can't be
right.
And they've now transferred the wooden load to a
that's
cart.
right. They did. They put
had a
everything on
cart.
the cart. They sold the horses or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Either Tahe or one of them says, as the horses are going by, look how stupid they are.
Right. And they stop and turn around and come back. It's like, wait a minute.
Now, this is one of the greatest examples of Kurosawa's use of the Toho scope, I think, in this scene now. Rokuruda chases after the soldiers because he kills 2 of them right there, because there's 4 soldiers altogether. Kills 2 of them right there. And the other 2 are running back to tell their camp that they found them. You see Mifune on the horse with the sword over his head, and he's not even riding the horse. He's got his hands off completely. So he is in total control of this animal at the same time. And he's got like that samurai pose, and the way that the camera moves, it's just adding speed to the scene.
Right.
You see the soldiers, you see him, you see the soldiers, you see him. It's just a masterful use. It's just one of these things where the shot is just perfectly lined in the letterbox screen. And he finally turns the corner, he catches up to them, and he's in the camp. He's like, you're going from the chase to the camp, and it's just like this really abrupt change. So you're surprised to see us. And then he runs into an old buddy, is probably the wrong word, but they've met on the battlefield before.
Right, and they respect each other.
I was going to say they had mutual admiration for each other's prowess, I guess.
Right, so then they laugh and they're like, oh, Fujita, Makabe, it's so glad that you're still alive. And then they're like, let's have a duel.
It's like a worthy opponent, yeah.
And this is one of my favorite scenes, again, where you sort of see how intimidating Mifune can be physically, and how it seems realistic, because he approaches the soldiers who have surrounded them. Fujita's soldiers have surrounded the 2 of them, and he goes to take a spear to choose for fighting. And every time he approaches the soldiers, they back away.
Off. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Almost in like a hive-like motion, like fish that are schooling and turning in the same direction.
That's a great analogy. That's right.
Yeah. And maybe this is where Lucas got the inept stormtrooper idea as well.
Right, and then they have a really amazingly epic fight. And there's so many great things about the scene, but one of my favorite things is you really see, again, Mifune's doing this himself, and especially the last scene when he breaks Fujita's spear. That's all in one take. Like, there's no cut there, so he has to move really fast.
Move in there and
move in, break the spear, disarm him, and like he really sells it. He's just such again, like sort of a really powerful actor. So you can buy, this is not an actor doing this. You can believe this is a samurai general.
But Makabe wins, of course. We would expect no less, and doesn't kill him. Tadakoro, was that his name?
Yeah, his name is Tadakoro Fujita. He doesn't kill him, and then he says, "We'll meet again," and he gives you that gunslinger smile, at Mifune smile, and and he rides off. But Fujita is like devastated because it's dishonorable.
Because he lost in front of his men.
In front of his own men.
Yeah.
He paid.
But that's one of the things that's happening in this movie. There's all these sort of subversions of expectations, and even in the behavior of the characters, not just the way that Kurosawa directs the film from the point of view of the peasants. Princess Yuki doesn't really behave like a princess should. She's angry at Makabe because he doesn't express grief over his sister's death. He's withholding that because he's seeing it as she's fulfilled her duty. I fulfilled my duty. Our duty is to protect you. And she's like, you need to be a human being.
Right.
And this is one of those scenes. It's almost like Makabe's been influenced by his time with Yuki, where he's like, I don't want to kill this guy. I like him.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's
Right.
dishonorable.
I respect him.
Yeah.
I respect him. And
Now, Yuki is, I think the way that she's made up,
Mm-hmm.
and she always has a very stern look on her face as well. So I
Yeah.
think she's just as intimidating in many ways.
more so.
Yeah, again, her eyebrows, Mifune and Misa Uehara, who plays Yuki, are both wearing false eyebrows because it's a no mask style.
Right.
So their eyebrows are like tilted upwards, and it does give their face a sort of mask-like look.
Less, yeah.
And Kurosawa had cast Misa Uehara because he said he was captivated by her extraordinary eyes. She has really large, expressive eyes. And she holds herself, very stiffly most of the time. She moves in a very...
She was very stoic, yes.
Yeah.
Always in a battle stance kind of a thing. She was always,
I really enjoyed the scene when she first meets Tai Matsuichi because they see her by the pond and they're like, oh ho.
Yeah,
like,
right.
There's that girl and she's carrying a stick and she uses it almost like a riding crop. And she like really dispatches them with no trouble whatsoever. She's like, pff, pff, like she hits them in the face. They're chasing her. She smacks them with like tree branches. They're like no match for her.
No.
Right.
Yeah,
at all.
Badass, man.
And they only entertain thoughts of doing something untoward to her when she's asleep.
When
Yes.
she's asleep.
Which is in a scene coming up. And then she's protected. And she never even wakes up by the farmer's daughter that's come along. And she like holds a rock over her head and she's going to bash their
That's
two
right.
pets.
That's right. I'm here to protect my princess now. Yeah.
But it's funny is because the position that she's in was very reminiscent of how Leia is laying in the Death Star when Luke and Han come upon her. It was almost the exact same position that she was in. So
Lucas says that it was really just R2D2 and C3PO, but I think there's actually more elements of this story that made their way into the Star Wars script.
Yeah.
Even down to his sort of feisty princess.
Yeah, because that's exactly what she is, right? Yeah.
The movie is not only following the movements of the two lowly characters, but it's also tracking the gold as well.
Right.
So that's what they're really trying to. The end game is them getting that back across the border to home.
Right. They go to the fire festival.
The fire festival.
The fire
festival. Right. Because again, like Makabe leaves because Makabe thinks now, okay, the wood is too conspicuous, and he needs to get a different container to carry this gold in. So now here's the thing. Like he talks about at one point the weight of the gold, like how many con they're going to carry, and I don't know if you guys know this, but 1 con is 8 pounds.
So that's a lot of gold.
Yeah. So like he's saying like I can carry 40 pounds. So he's carrying like 320 pounds of gold on his back. So they think, okay, well the wood is too conspicuous. So he goes off to find another container. This is when Tai and Matsuichi try to attack the princess, and then they hear some people chanting. Like, oh, what is this? They climb up the hill. They see all these people carrying wood. Oh, it's for the famous Yamana's Fire Festival. So they think, again, they make the wrong decision, as they always do. They always make the wrong decision, these two. They're going to we'll take the wood and we'll just sort of slide in here.
I thought that was actually pretty smart. I'm like, drop right in that parade.
But of course, there are soldiers hanging around looking for people who deviate from the festival.
Right.
So they're trying to avoid throwing the cart in the fire, and then Makabe comes back, catches up with them, and is like, you got to burn it. Like you have to, because otherwise we'll be caught.
Right.
And in the meantime, Yuki is being transformed by this festival. This is actually a really important scene. It seems like a throwaway thing, but Yuki is really affected by the lyrics of this song that they sing about the impermanence of life and how important it is to sort of maximize your time on Earth, and now she's sort of starting to realize, sort of what the world is about, what life is about, because she's been very sheltered up to this point. And you can see it in the scene when they're, dancing around in the two peasants are weeping because they're seeing the gold burning in the fire, they think. And she is like has this very joyous expression on her face. You know, she's completely embraced the festival.
It's about the only time you ever saw emotion on her face.
Well, except when she weeps for Makabe's sister.
Right.
And then the next morning, they're all in the ashes trying to dig out the gold.
Yeah, because it would take a much hotter heat to melt the gold than... I got a little bit of a Rise of Skywalker with that festival, and Rey walking around, kind of taking in what was unfolding in front of her as well. Did you know that song was written by Lin-Manuel Miranda?
In Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
Yeah, not in Hidden Fortress.
Not in Hidden Fortress.
Not in Hidden Fortress. That would have been pretty impressive if he pulled that off.
Yeah.
So, but I digress.
It's a great scene, though, the next day when they're picking out the gold and they hear the conch shells blowing. You know, that the Yamana clan is approaching. So Makabe's like, we got to go. Like, we just have to leave whatever's left.
Right.
And they start off, and Tahe and Madacichi can barely carry the gold that they have on their back. Okay, they're like turtles. You know, if they get stuck in a sitting position, they're never going to get up again.
Get back Hawkman with that pack around his back.
And they start to follow the other three. They stop for a break, like to catch their breath, and the two of them are like, we can't leave all that gold behind.
So
scramble. They run back to pick out the rest of it, and then there's a hilarious scene where they're like putting all this gold in bags and they're still sifting through the ashes, and two soldiers show up, and they're like, what are you looking for? They don't look in the bags to see what
they're actually collecting.
what they're carrying. Like, oh, what are you looking for? So they start sifting through the ashes, and the two of them just sort of bow.
Yep.
And they run away.
Run away.
They just start to run.
And that's when these two soldiers sort of twig to what's happening. They're like, oh, they're running. They must be doing something wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Bumbling idiots to the end.
And it's such a great scene. And then, of course, because these two are following them, Makabe sort of ropes them in as additional gold carriers.
Right. Earn your keep, dude.
So then they hear the approach. This is actually a really tense scene, I think. As you hear the conch shells approaching, like getting closer and closer, sort of intermittently through the last several scenes before they're finally caught. And it's such a powerful scene because Makabe hands Yuki the short sword, because they're about to be captured by the soldiers. He does not want her to be dishonored through capture, so he gives her the sword so she can kill herself.
Yeah.
But she never has a chance to because they think they're going to get away, and then they're captured when they can see the border. They're inside of the border.
Now, it's important to note that the gold gets across the border before they do on the horses, correct?
The Yamana have captured them and the gold is like behind it's like behind almost a cage. It's like in a big pile, and all the Yamana soldiers are like, I've never seen so much gold before, and it's really important because Kurosawa makes sure to keep track of where the gold is, and he makes sure that you as the viewer know
where it is,
where the gold is.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tadakoro Fujita returns at this point, which is actually really important to the final.
Right. And with a visible giant scar across his face,
right
the bridge of his nose and his face. He was beaten by his superior for losing in that spear battle that we saw earlier. So he was dishonored by not only Makabe, but by his own men. So, and he has the scar to bear it now.
Right, and he's angry at Makabe, and he's visibly a different person. He previously seemed like a good-natured, sort of jolly person, and now he's clearly embittered by his experiences. And Yuki tells him off. She's like, I think your attitude is idiotic, basically, that, you've been given a life and, you should appreciate it. And like these notions of honor are absurd. And that's when you see that she's really been changed by her experience, especially at the Fire Festival, because then she sings the Fire Festival song again. And again, if you know anything about Japanese no theater, she actually sings it in the no theater style. So there's all these sort of callbacks to no theater like throughout with her character. Like I said, with her music specifically is no, the no flute. She sings in the no theater style, the no mask style of her makeup, and she seems very not content to die, but does not feel that her life has been wasted because she's seen the world, and she tells Makabe, this time on the road has filled me with happiness. I've gotten to see people in a way I never would have seen them before. So I thank you, even though, we're about to die.
Right. Road trip.
So she's really come to peace with this. And then again, at the very end, they're on the horses, Yuki and Makabe. The servant girl is significantly not on a horse. She's still there tied up, but she's standing on the ground. She's not important enough to put on a horse. And then they load all the gold up on the horses, and you see all the saddlebags with the horses. Now at this point, Tai and Marusichi aren't part of what's happening. So this is one of the few times in the film when you're not seeing things from their point of view. They actually tried again to betray Makabe, thinking, we'll tell you where the princess is and all this gold that you're looking for. And by the time they show up, the Yamane soldiers laugh at them. They're like, we already caught them.
Yeah, we have it. We're good. Thanks.
And their gold. So you see them trudge through the gate. And that's significant too, because you know that freedom is on the other side of that gate. And they're about to be taken off, the general and the princess and all the gold. And Fujita has a sudden change of heart. And he's been transformed by Yuki, by her attitude. And he again sings the song from the Fire Festival. And then he goes down and tells the soldiers, turn these horses around. And they're all kind of looking at him like, why would we turn the horses around? And he's like, just turn them around. He's a general. They can't say no. And he turns around, he slaps the horses, and they all run through the gate. They're off the gold goes.
Bye-bye.
And then he helps Makabe and Yuki free themselves. And then it's, again, where Kurosawa subverts expectations. Fujita's motivation at this point clearly is like he's done this heroic thing and he's redeemed himself and he thinks he's going to die, right? He's going to sacrifice himself so they can get away. But Yuki turns around and says, don't waste your life. Yeah. Get on a horse and follow us.
Come with us.
Yeah. So he does, which is, again, just, sort of unexpected. If you're used to watching these types of films, that's not what happens. That character would gloriously sacrifice himself. Yeah. So they're all free now. Makabe scoops up the servant girl on the back of his horse, so she's not left behind either. And they ride off on the horses, and they see the horses with the gold far below in the valley. And now we return to Tahe and Marusichi. And this is one of my favorite scenes in the film because they're in complete despair. They've been through this huge thing, all of these, adventures. They thought they were going to have more gold than they could ever imagine.
Yeah, and they got nothing.
They have nothing. They don't even have, like, the piece of gold that they found in the stick initially. They have nothing. And they're laying on the ground, and Tahe is laying on his side, and he has, like, his knees curled up in his chest. He looks like a little kid who just had a temper tantrum, And he's like so tired. He's got his hands between his legs.
We got nothing. We got absolutely nothing.
Suddenly they've decided to be sentimental. Oh, we've been through so much. Let's stay friends.
That's right after college.
Right? And like, let's be friends when we go back to the village. And they're feeling very sincere toward one another. And then the horses show up.
Yep.
Right.
With the gold, and they get up and they're like, what is this? So now immediately
now they're fighting again.
Immediately they're like, the greed kicks in.
They're enemies, right?
It's like, I saw it first. No, I saw it first. And
right. Tahe takes the majority of the horses, and Marusichi's left with one.
Right.
And he's like, but we're supposed to split it equally. And he's like, no, I already have these horses.
Yeah.
Jerks.
So like they're fighting again. A bunch of soldiers show up, say, this gold doesn't belong to you two. Takes them away and imprisons them. Now, again, let's stay friends in heaven.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they think they're going to die. They think they're going to be executed. And then you have that final beautiful scene where they're brought into this courtyard and they think they're about to be punished.
Yeah.
And they see Makabe and Fujita and Princess Yuki. Now they look like gods.
Yeah, Mifune is in full samurai gear.
Right,
At this
yeah.
point.
At her side, yeah.
Yeah.
And she's dressed like a princess. She's in her kimono and she's made up and her hair is done and she looks like a different person. And they don't recognize these people that they've traveled with. And so then Makabe says, does something, I think something very uncharacteristic where he says, you guys have done a lot for us, and you really worked hard. So we can't give you that much gold because we needed to rebuild the clan, but we're going to give you this one piece of gold. And Princess Yuki says, no fighting.
Yeah.
You have to share it equally.
Yeah.
And they're so intimidated by this whole scene that they're just kind of like, yes, okay. And there's a wonderful scene at the end. They're walking down the stairs out of the castle, looking back up, and you really see the contrast between sort of their status.
Right.
And again, this sort of like house of the gods that they're leaving at the top of the hill.
Mm.
And Tahe has the gold inside his tunic, so he takes it out and says, why don't you carry it? And Masachishi says, no, it's okay. You can hold on to it. And they walk away. And it's such a great ending to the film. And I'm sorry that I have just totally hijacked this podcast because
that's why we brought you on, though.
Yeah, we
because I wouldn't have brought away.
We were
even a
expecting no
quarter of
less
that.
from you on this episode.
No, that is.
I cannot contain myself when I'm talking about these films. Yesterday, I said to my husband, I need some time in the morning to collect my thoughts. He was like, "You've been collecting your thoughts for decades." He was like,
now make me breakfast.
He was like, you were literally born to do this.
There you go. You got this one, hun. Nice.
Yeah. Now all we have to do is talk about Yojimbo and Seven Samurai and come back to all these things once the time is right. So
right, I know. So guys, it'll be more like Christina Henry's lecture series.
Yeah.
Nice. I didn't have to pay $12.50 to get in though.
Kurosawa.
So we were talking about the Lucas and the influence that he took from this. Now, and both of you will know this as well, but in that interview on the Criterion disc, he revealed that originally Star Wars was going to involve a young Jedi and his master going through the movie, which he kind of based the characters of the general and the princess. He basically he kind of took that and used it.
Right.
Didn't end up using that for Star Wars, but later on for the Phantom Menace, of course he did with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan.
Listen, he wrote years worth of notes. I mean, he knew, he had to write the backstory. His first draft for Star Wars was all three, what we know as the original trilogy. It was, Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi, basically.
Right.
He had everything together, and he knew leading into it, and he had to just pick a story that was self-contained because you never knew going forward.
And the whole thing with Amidala in episode 1. And her handmaiden being the decoy,
there's huge influences in here. Yeah.
And even the dissolves.
Yeah, the wipes. The wipes. Those even go back to those old classic Republican cliffhangers. That was a film style. The transition from one scene to another.
Yeah, part of the proof that it's a Western styled film.
Yeah.
Right, and it's the way Kurosawa really uses the widescreen. We talked about John Ford was his favorite director, and a lot of the shots, especially when they're in the hidden fortress, and you see this sort of like burnt out landscape behind them, sort of like the blinding white rock, and these big vistas, these sort of big mountains behind. Is really reminiscent of a lot of John Ford's westerns.
Oh yeah, we had beautiful buttes and all that stuff in the Wyoming.
But the interesting thing about George Lucas, now the film, I don't know if you know this, so the film's 139 minutes long. Toho was very concerned about the American response to this film, so they cut 13 minutes off of it for the American release.
Really?
Yes. And I went and actually looked at some of the reviews at the time, and they're very dismissive of this film, especially the American media.
I was going to ask you how this was actually received, because I did read something that Kurosawa was not really all that renowned in Japan until he started getting some play over here in the West.
Yeah. So it was initially he had gotten a lot of international accolades for Rashomon.
Okay. Which is
amazing.
Yeah.
Movie. And a lot of his films, were considered, the ones that Western audiences saw were like serious films by him, right? Rashomon or Seven Samurai. So when Hidden Fortress was released, a lot of the American media was very dismissive of it. They're like, oh, well, he's just like, he made this throwaway film. And I really wonder what 13 minutes were cut out of the film for that initial release. But then I read that later there was a 1962 reissue and they had cut the film down to 90 minutes.
Oof.
I do not know what they could have cut out of the film.
Right.
And still have it make sense.
Right.
But I'm wondering what George Lucas saw. Did he see the initial 126-minute cut? Did he see the 90-minute cut? Because that full cut was not available in the U.S. until 1984.
Now, I would assume that Lucas probably saw the full version because he was in film school. I was going to say, he was in film school circles. They probably had the...
Oh, yeah, they were like film nerds. They probably somehow... That's pretty interesting, though.
But yeah.
I mean, it is a long movie.
But yeah, to somebody that does not know the story, that has never seen it before, like, how would it make sense? What would the characters' motivations be? Even if it was they cut it down to the action and it was very fast moving, you wouldn't get any of the backstory or care about the characters.
And you would lose a lot of those beautiful shots that Kurosawa makes in this film.
And I'd never seen it before. I've seen Seven Samurai, I've seen Yojimbo, but
right?
I've never seen this before.
Yeah, same here.
And it was very entertaining. And, it did have the added bonus of I was looking for any kind of Star Wars connotations.
Correct. Well,
while I was watching it, because about that going into it.
Yeah.
But it was, even if I didn't know that, I would have liked this. I'm going to go solid 4 buckets from me.
Yeah, I'd probably maybe not go quite that high, but a lot of like what Christina was talking about was lost on me because I just don't know, the whole lore of the Japanese culture and whatnot, and the some of the stuff that's these characters are being subvertive compared to expectations. So, going in, if I knew all that, I probably would appreciate it a much different level. And again, I've never seen this before. I know of this. I knew, straight up that this was a huge influence on Lucas, but it was not what I was expecting at all. But I still enjoyed it. I'd go 3.5.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is a 4 movie. 4 bucket movie, only because it's not my favorite Kurosawa Mifune collaboration. My favorite far and away is Yojimbo, and guys, really, I can talk about Yojimbo for like 4 hours. So
break out the coffee, kids.
Yeah, I don't know how much background you read on this movie either, but he went Kurosawa went crazily over budget on this film. Toho was really freaked out because he had set some locations for shooting, and he was supposed to film for 10 days, and there were 3 typhoons in a row.
Oof.
That destroyed the landscape, and so he ended up being in this location for 100 days, which is a lot different than 10 days.
Right.
Basically waiting for the weather to clear so they could get the shots that they wanted to get in these landscapes.
Now, if only Jon Favreau was around.
Yeah,
that's right.
Those virtual environments.
It sounds like Spielberg on Martha's Vineyard.
There you go.
Yes, it is a lot like that, actually.
The samurai is not working. The samurai is not working.
So I mean, I'm glad that you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just hijacked your podcast.
Not at all. No, it's funny because we're always willing to try something new.
But then when you watch something like this, you realize it's not really new at all. It's
absolutely.
Yeah. You realize how much it means to the movies that you love and watch all the time. That it ties in completely.
I've mentioned it numerous times.
It turns out not being foreign at all.
Right. The Adventures of Robin Hood with Errol Flynn, which I see a lot more visual influences on Star Wars from that. So, but we'll get there one day.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of people just think of foreign films as having some kind of pedigree. Like
it forces you to think. First of all, I dragged my buddy to go see Pan's Labyrinth and neglected to mention that it was subtitled until we got in the theater. But yeah, now you're forced to, movies you can just accept on a certain level. But a foreign film, if it's dubbed, which I'm not really crazy about, but subtitles, you're now forced to read the dialogue, and you're missing out on some of the, like you said, the vast vistas and what the directors put on screen. Takes a back seat to you trying to play catch up with the dialogue, and you're trying to put it in a collection of the characters, and sometimes that it's a turn off for some people.
I mean, I think I always tell people that subtitles, are almost like Shakespeare. You just have to get used to it.
Right.
Like Shakespeare is not Old English. It's modern English. He uses words that you recognize. He just uses them in a way that you don't hear all the time. Right. So you just need to relax and let your ear adjust when you're listening to Shakespeare. When you are watching subtitled films, after a while, I've said this before, 90% of what I watch is in Japanese. So I don't even feel myself reading them anymore. I'm just sort of picking them up subliminally because it's, the way I watch, almost all the things I watch are either Japanese or Korean or Chinese, and maybe 5% of what I watch is in English. So you just start picking up things subliminally the more you watch. And I hate dubbing because I want to hear the inflections of the actors' voices. I don't care if I actually understand the words.
Right.
I want to hear their tone. I want to hear the way they're speaking. The way that Yuki speaks in the film is very significant. She has upper class speech pattern, which is why it's so important to hide her. But it's an upper class speech pattern that we don't have in the US. That's not something that you can duplicate. So I don't know how you would dub that.
Right.
It would sound very, very strange if you dubbed it in English.
She would sound like Queen Amidala.
Well, maybe. I'm not really sure what's going on with the dialogue in that movie, but
or the delivery for that matter. Yeah.
Misa gonna die.
I can't think of a better segue than to go into our
Confessionals.
And this is the first time that Christina has ever joined us for a confessional. So this is
that's a
first.
Confessional in and of itself.
So
this is my first confessional.
This is the last TMI to be recorded in 2019.
What?
Yes. So this is a bit of a New Year's episode. So with that in mind, we thought that we would look back at 2019 and reveal what our favorite film was. And technically, it would need to be released in 2019 in order to make our consideration.
So I think you guys should go first because I haven't done this before.
No.
And also because I just talked a lot. So you guys
she needs to take a breath.
Okay.
And breathe.
All right. So Jeff, you and I don't really have to go far to figure this out because we just take a look at what we've watched and what made the 5 bucket list, right?
Right. Well, so here's the thing, which is I'm not necessarily going to go with my favorite movie, but I'm going to go with 2 movies that really stuck with me.
Okay.
So, I mean, I probably gave them high marks without going back and seeing what I actually rated them. But the 2 movies that have really resonate with me, like we're watching movies every week. Right, we're moving. We're always onto something else. But these are the 2 movies that I have consistently, in talking to people, highly recommend. If you have not seen these movies, seek them out because the 2 of them just warrant as much audience as possible. And the first is Jojo Rabbit. This really, really stuck with me as an important movie that character-wise, it was beautiful. It's shot. It's set up. The script is exceeds expectations because I don't really know what my expectations were, but it's a movie that I highly recommend to everyone I can recommend it to. Now, there's certain people I know that would not appreciate it, so I stay away from it. But the other one is The Missing Link, the Leica animated movie. And I know that it's up right now for Best Animated Feature. The awards season is coming around. And Leica was robbed of anything with Kubo and the Two Strings, and it disgusts me to no end that this movie is handmade frame by frame with these characters, and it was funny. I loved it. I enjoyed it. Remember, enjoyed talking about it. And so these are my two movies that really stuck out for me this year.
Now, I would also go with Jojo Rabbit because just not only did I really enjoy the movie and I found it very emotional as well, but the whole movie-going experience, I think, really affected my take on the movie. Going to see it in the Downing Film Center, and it was not a crowded theater, but the people that were there were film lovers, and especially the proprietors, whom I loved. It was just a one-of-a-kind experience and a one-of-a-kind movie. Taika Waititi, I have loved everything that I've seen of his thus far. Yeah, anybody doesn't know what I'm talking about, please go look it up and do yourself a favor and see it, because I really enjoyed it. I was looking to see if Into the Spider-Verse was 2019, but it is not.
No, that
was it was last year.
That was
so I can't say that one.
Dude.
Yeah,
but you're right.
Jojo Rabbit is mine.
Okay, nice.
Okay, so again, we're like weird outlier here, and actually, my favorite film of this year came out very early in the year, and it was Us by Jordan Peele. And I don't know if
I haven't seen it yet.
I haven't seen it either.
See, I went back and looked at your old podcast to see if you guys had talked about it, because I was like, this is my favorite movie that I've seen this year. And I think it's kind of unfortunate that you're going to see it when you do watch it, you're going to see it for the first time on video. Because this is one of those movies where seeing it in the theater, I think, really impacts your first time perception of the film. Because like a lot of horror movies, it sort of depends on that closed-in feeling that you get in the theater. It's dark. All of your attention's on the film. The phone isn't ringing, right? You're not going to pause it to go get a snack. Everything in you is really focused on the film. I feel like a lot of horror movies suffer from, like if you watch it for the first time at home, because you tend not to think of it as a seamless experience the way you do in the theater. You just feel free, like, oh, well, I need a drink, I'll just pause it.
Yeah, pause, yeah.
And this is not the kind of film you want to pause the first time you see it. It's so dependent on the building of tension, as the film ratchets up. So if you do watch it at home for the first time, I really, really beg you, clear out 2 hours. Sit down and watch it with no distractions and just try to duplicate that theater experience as much as you can. I don't think I thought about any movie this year as much as I've thought about that film.
Really? Wow.
Yes. There's so many layers in it. Layers of plot, layers of character, layers of references to other horror movies that Jordan Peele likes. So if you're a horror film, there's a bunch of stuff to pick up.
That's why we didn't cover it. Neither one of us are horror fans.
So
no, Jeff. Now,
all right.
I'm a bit more than you are.
That is true.
Just baby steps. We have done horror. I put
my foot out there. I've stepped into some genres that I wasn't.
But I remember having a discussion about Us, because we always take a look at what's coming out that month or what the next 2 months and what's on the horizon and what we'd like to cover. And Jeff, I know you were very apprehensive. I remember about Us. You're like, nope, don't want.
So here's the thing: it's if you're squeamish, it's not gory. There's a little tiny bit of blood splatter in a couple scenes, but it's not a thing where you're going to be seeing people getting eviscerated. If that's what you're
I don't think that's worried about. I don't know.
So it's not that kind of film. It's more psychological tension.
Maybe that's probably my bigger issue with these damn creepy dolls chasing me around in my sleep.
It's amazing visually. It's one of the most unique films I've ever seen.
Okay. I love Get Out. I mean, that
And they're,
movie, you know,
yeah,
out of
and
the gate, he's doing something you've never seen before. So
he's subverting your expectations in Get Out. That's what he's doing. Again, we were talking earlier about Kurosawa subverting expectations of the period film.
right,
You know, Jordan Peele in Get Out takes all of those horror movie tropes
right.
that you're familiar with and turns them on their head. And I read a book a few years ago about why things become popular. I've forgotten the name of the book now, but it was basically about how certain things became popular at certain times, music, movies, books, whatever. And the author said that audiences, no matter what they're consuming, want something familiar with a gentle touch of surprise. So they don't want the same thing they've seen before exactly. What they want is something that feels familiar enough to let them in, and then it will turn it or twist it to surprise you. That's why we like Star Wars.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Star Wars,
you just described The Force Awakens.
right. All the Star Wars films take existing tropes, things that we
Right.
know, puts them in a fresh environment, and or mashes things together in a way that makes you love it, right? So, but if there wasn't something familiar about them, then you probably wouldn't like it as much. So, but Jordan Peele does this in his movies, and I don't think I've ever been so impressed with a director like, you know, like when I saw Get Out or Us, just the way he takes things that you know and just, again, just sort of tweaks them a little bit, subverts your expectations. And visually, Us is just extraordinary and has a great score that is really used to good effect in the film. So many elements of it that I like.
I think it's on HBO right now. So
Is it?
yeah.
Yeah, and Jordan Peele, when Get Out was released, you know, I kind of put him, in my mind, in the same category as Jon Favreau, where you're taking who you know to be a comedic actor,
yeah,
becoming a very successful director, which is a surprise, you know. And so Get Out surprised me, knowing Jordan Peele from the Comedy Central show that he did.
Right.
And now he's one of the most renowned directors that we have in this country. So yeah, I'm looking forward to see Us.
Okay. All right.
But I would like, please, like, just make sure you like don't have any interruptions. You know, like put your phone away, all that kind of stuff. I really,
chase my family out.
I feel passionately about that, because I think the film will suffer if you know, pause it like partway through, and it breaks up the tension of the movie. You know, my son has been wanting to watch it, and we saw it in the theater without him, and I would let him watch it, but I'm like, we need 2 hours where there's nothing else going on.
Right.
You know, where we can just sit and focus on this film. But you know, having said that, I am going to see Parasite tomorrow, so it's possible that will become like my number one film after tomorrow.
Wow. Well, you'll have to let us know.
Wow, expectations are high, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, I love the director,
right.
So I just sense, you know, it's my aesthetic. So
okay. There you go.
Right. So now, speaking of the future, next week we are going to be taking on Lost in Space Season 2. Now, I don't remember if we would have had the opportunity to do Lost in Space Season 1 when it was first released, or we just had resistance.
We watched it, and we talked about it, but not on the show.
Not on the show, right?
Yeah, correct. That was when there was 5 of us involved. So
right. So yeah, there would have been a democratic procedure going on there. So, but along with Lost in Space Season 2, we are doing The Black Hole. So now this is one of those movies that Jeff brings up on a fairly regular basis, but we've just never gotten around to covering it.
If you throw it out there enough times, eventually we have to give in.
Right, right. So it's definitely a space-themed episode.
There you go.
Next week. Our first of 2020.
Robots.
Christina, thank you as always.
Yes. Always
you are welcome any time that you'd like to come on. Very glad that you're on to talk about this, because it's probably not something that we would have picked ourselves. And I'm
not only that, we couldn't have brought what you brought to the table.
No, absolutely not. So
thank you guys.
We seized on the opportunity.
Yes.
Okay.
So-
All right, guys.
Okay, guys.
Enjoy.
Bye.
See ya.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
I feel Smurfy.
Oh, tiny little Beskar suit.